Alright, in this first video we're going to be looking at some of the basic or introductory concepts that we look at in economics. So we're going to be looking at what is meant by the term living standards, what is meant by the term economics, and what is an economy, and the difference between micro and macroeconomics. So first of all, the aim of any economy is to maximise living standards. The study of economics is all about using our scarce resources as effectively and efficiently as possible to maximise our living standards. Now, living standards has two components, and whenever you get a question on living standards, you have to talk about its impact on both material and non-material living standards. If you don't talk about both, then chances are you're not going to get full marks for that question. So make sure you're reading questions carefully. So when we're looking at material living standards, we're looking at essentially people's access to goods and services. So it is essentially measured by GDP per capita, which is another word for income per person. That is the main way that we measure material living standards. And the ways that we improve our material living standards is if we can increase the real value of goods and services produced each year. And what that means is that as an economy, we're producing more in real terms. So we'll talk about that more when we look at macroeconomics, but it's basically saying that we're keeping prices constant and that we're actually producing more, or the value of our goods and services is more once we keep prices constant. It rises when an economy gets bigger. So when a country grows, if it has a high rate of economic growth, the country will have more wealth to spread amongst its citizens. And if our growth grows by more than our population grows, that will cause a higher GDP per capita. Material living standards also depend on how evenly income is distributed. So if we have a really high GDP per capita, that might not mean that everyone is well off, because it's just the average. So we may have some people that are earning lots and lots of money, while others are poor or don't have access to basic goods and services. It also depends on the level of inflation. So GDP per capita might rise from 50,000 to 60,000, but if we have a high level of inflation and prices double, then people's purchasing power is also reduced. And it's also determined by the level of unemployment or the level of employment in the economy. So material living standards measured by GDP per capita, income per person, and it's about the real value of goods and services that an economy produces. Non-material living standards are quality of life factors. So they're not about how many goods and services we can acquire. They are about quality of life factors. So things like personal happiness, pollution, the amount of leisure time that people have access to, their job satisfaction. So for example, some people might be really rich and have a high GDP per capita, but they may not have much leisure time. So we wouldn't say overall their overall living standards are very high. Job satisfaction, crime and violence. So we might have rich people, but they might be in constant fear that their house is going to get burgled. Family relationships and cohesion, congestion or overcrowding, the level of democracy or the say that people have in their economy or their political system. So all of these things are affecting our non-material living standards. And there is not always a direct correlation between material and non-material living standards. Can material living standards increase while non-material living standards decrease? Of course they can. If we work harder, but we may experience a drop in our leisure time, or we may be more stressed, or we may not have the job satisfaction that we may have. These are the questions we're going to discuss in class. Economics. So economics is the study of how limited resources are used to produce goods and services to help satisfy people's unlimited wants and needs. That is the study of economics, how we use our limited resources, and we'll discuss what resources means in a future video, to produce goods and services to try and satisfy as many as possible of society's unlimited wants and needs in order to maximise living standards. It's also a study of individual preferences and incentives, and we'll talk about those a little bit more later as well. Okay, another definition of economics, the study of how rational economic actors make choices to allocate scarce resources in a manner that minimises opportunity cost and maximises the overall living standards or well-being of citizens. And we'll break that down as a group in class. But we're looking at rational people, and what does rational mean? We're looking at scarce resources. What are our scarce resources? What does opportunity cost mean? And we've discussed the meaning of living standards. Okay. The definition of economy. An economy is any place or region where production of goods and services takes place and income is made from selling those goods and services. So to be an economy, we have to be producing goods and services and generating some form of income. The three things that are present in any economy are production, income, and expenditure. So things will be produced, people will generate an income, and people will spend money on goods and services. Right, so the two types of economics that you need to be aware of are microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics is looking at the smaller parts of the economy that make up the whole economy. So we're looking at individual businesses or individual firms. Macroeconomics is looking at aggregate demand or national spending or total level of production, income and expenditure in an economy. So we're looking at the economy as a whole. Those of you that do biology, I've been told that cell biology would be a study similar to microeconomics and ecology would be macroeconomics, but I'll take their word for that. I'm no biologist. Right, so looking more at what is entailed, what microeconomics and macroeconomics entails. Microeconomics, studying the various small parts of the economy. It's a study of economic behaviour of individuals as consumers and producers. So we're looking at how people act as individuals. So what are we spending our money on? What are producers deciding to make? We're looking at what influences their choices. So why do producers allocate resources to certain areas over some other areas? And some things we'll look at is things like the production costs in individual businesses, the prices that we're charging, so the prices that we can charge in the soft drink industry, in the property market, all of those are microeconomic questions. The price of wool, the price of minerals, the price of service industries, say tourism, education. All of those are microeconomic questions, individual industries within the economy. So we look at the role of individual markets in determining how resources are allocated. And we also will be looking at how the government intervenes in individual markets to improve efficiency. What do they do to improve our living standards? Macroeconomics is looking at the economy as a whole. So a definition of macroeconomics is looking at aggregate levels of production, employment and expenditure in the total economy. So things they're going to be looking at in macroeconomics includes total level of economic growth, inflation, so how much average level of prices are increasing, the total level of unemployment in the economy, so what percentage of people can't get a job. If we're looking at the level of unemployment just in the mining industry, that would be a microeconomic question. Or the level of unemployment in the retail industry, that would be a microeconomic question. But the total level of unemployment is a macroeconomic. And we're looking at total levels of national spending, income and production. These last two things we will look at a bit later on in the year, external stability and equity in income distribution. External stability is related to how much debt Australia has to other countries, or owes other countries. So some microeconomic questions. How many workers should we hire to maximise profits? If our main competitor releases their product in May, when is the best time to release our products? Macroeconomic questions. How will the European debt crisis impact Australia, the economy as a whole? Will unemployment rise if there is an increase in taxes? Will an increase in the money supply boost output or just increase inflation? So if we print more money, will that actually help our economy? And this last slide is just a summary of some of the things we'd be looking at within micro and macroeconomics. So in terms of production, in microeconomic questions would be how much steel are we going to produce, how many cars. Macroeconomics, looking at things like gross domestic product, total level of output. Prices, we're looking at prices of individual products, where in a macro sense we're looking at average level of prices in the economy, or the rate of inflation, how much prices are going up by on average. Distribution of wealth, we're looking at minimum wages within particular industries, wages in particular industries, what are executives getting paid in particular industries, where in terms of macroeconomics we're looking at national income and total wages and salaries. What's the total amount that Australian producers are getting paid or workers are getting paid? And employment in individual industries, where macro is looking at the total level of unemployment. That's the first video. Thank you.